Well, a short week, a desperate team, and a lot of questions around injuries. This is the Saints Insider Podcast, Tuesday, October 17th. Zach Ewing here with Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan inside our Saints Insider studio in Metairie. We're brought to you by Bank Plus. We're glad you're here with us. Saints Insider, sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. And we will try to learn something today. We'll try to, get some thoughts together on a team that seems like it's just constantly at a crossroads, guys. Like it's one fork in the road after another. And now the Saints are 3-3, lost to Houston on Sunday, face a short week, and it's the same thing.
I mean, I just think the farther along you get into this, the more and more you just like, well, maybe they're just a bad team, right? We keep waiting for this team to develop into the team that we all thought they would be. You know, the Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were sort of thing. They haven't been. They've just been a mediocre football team right now. I think it's fair to say that's what they are because this is 6 games in. They haven't put together 2 strong performances back-to-back throughout this 6-game stretch. We keep hoping this offense can show some signs of being this kind of explosive unit that we all figured it might be with all the weapons that they have, but they haven't shown it. So, like, at this point, you got to say they're a mediocre football team until they prove otherwise.
Yeah, you remember that viral video after the Patriots where Dennis is like, that's my team? Well, I think it was more the team was the Houston Texans game. Because, I mean, that's actually been more indicative. The Patriots game is a little more of an outlier, in my opinion. So I agree with Luke. I mean, at some point, all this talk and all the work that we keep hearing about, I mean, it has to manifest itself into something. What are they doing out there on Airline Drive if they're not working to correct all these issues that keep cropping up? So I think it's fair for fans to be frustrated. I think it's fair for media to be critical of what's going on right now because it's not getting corrected, and we're hearing a lot of rhetoric over and over. At some point, that gets old.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. I mean, we're just hearing the same. We've been hearing these speeches for the past, 23 games now. It's been constant, and this is who the team is. And you look at the schedule, I mean, they haven't beat a good team. They haven't really lost to a good team. They've just played some average football teams in there, and they have an average record of 3-3 right now.
Yeah, it's a short week, so this is our only pregame podcast, so we're going to kind of combine wrapping up the Texans with previewing the Jags game. And the Saints look like they're going to catch another break. Trevor Lawrence is questionable for the game. He was on the Jaguars injury report. He twisted his knee up on the very last play that he was in Sunday's game. And it looks like there's some significant concern whether he's going to play or not. The Saints are favored by 3 points, which makes really no sense unless you think Trevor Lawrence is not playing. The Jaguars have some other injuries. Of course, the Saints do too. But again, you're at a spot where if the Saints play like they think they can play, this is a game they could win.
Yeah, but I've picked the Saints to win 5 out of their 6 games this year because, on paper, they should win.
They should
win all of these games. So it's just I just will not. I will not feel comfortable thinking this team is going to go out and beat CJ Beathard until they show they can do it. They've burned me so many times these last 2 years. I'm sick of it. I just want to. I want to see this team play some consistent football and play up to his talent. If this is what his talent level is, fine. I don't think anybody thinks it is, right? Everybody is looking at this team thinking okay, they should be so good. They should at least be competent on the offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, they're fine. But we keep talking about this. This is 2 straight years where you see it there, and it's just always out of reach.
Let's spend just a minute recapping Sunday. Rod, you were in Houston. The red zone is the story of the game. The Saints were inside the 40-yard line 7 times. They scored 1 touchdown and a couple of field goals out of 7 trips inside the 40. And only one of those, by the way, ended in a turnover. That was the very last play of the game, or last meaningful play of the game. So it's not like they were down there and turning the ball over. They just couldn't move once the space on the field got shorter.
Yeah, it's been the same problem all season. It's been the same problem that Derek Carr's had throughout his career. His teams aren't scoring in the red zone, and you just saw it happen again. And then at the very end of the game, they get to the 24-yard line, and I think Pete Carmichael said, "Hey, let's not get in the red zone and try to score. Let's just try to go over the red zone and let's just keep
Maybe that
throwing
was the
some shots."
strategy. Like, don't get in the red zone.
Yeah. So it's unbelievable that you see this happening, and the missed field goals, just everything that this team has to play perfect to win a game almost. Unless you're playing somebody like New England who's really bad. But I think they have to really jump on teams early to have a chance, because if they get behind or just have to score, they just can't do it.
Yeah, Dunk, we were all driving back home from Houston yesterday, so you were the one talking to all these guys as they kind of dissected that Houston game. It's a multifaceted issue, I guess is the easy way of putting it. I mean, there's just so many different guys who kind of have dirty hands when it comes to these red zone failures.
Yeah, I think that's very important to note, because I think everyone wants to simplify it and find one scapegoat. And right now that scapegoat seems to be Pete Carmichael. It's been that way for a while. And look, he's got to get better. There's no question. He tends to rely on this. One of the trademark plays in the Saints playbook from the Peyton era is the all-go special. It's 4 vertical routes. They've kind of patented that play. It's used around the league. They're certainly not the only team, but they were one of the forerunners of it, and they relied on that heavily. It was what Marcus Colston made his hay on, basically 4 vertical routes, and you really challenge the defense. And he loves that when they get to the red zone. It's what they do. It's what Rod's talking about. But at some point, either the players got to win those routes, or they got to stop calling it, or Derek Carr's got to put a better ball in. But it's all of it. It's not just the play call. Sometimes they have a good play call and they don't execute. And I think their offensive line issues are very valid, very real. And really, that's where I think it all kind of starts with this team. Yes, they need to get better at quarterback. I mean, Derek Carr's made some plays when he gets muddy. He doesn't operate well, like most quarterbacks. The miscommunication issues at the receiving core, that's a real issue. The injuries up front. But to me, there's so many myriad issues that I don't know how they get it all fixed. Certainly not in a short week this quickly. But what Houston did, I thought, was very smart. I mean, they're a very well-coached team. They basically challenged the Saints' passing attack. They came after them, pressuring them, and it forced some of the Saints' weaknesses across the line that we've seen. Eventually somebody's going to break down, miss an assignment, and then when the protection did hold up, then the pressure was on the receiving core, and they were mixing up. So eventually somebody messes up for the Saints. And that's really what it comes down to. Teams aren't going to let them get those big explosive plays. They got one long one to Shaheed. But for the most part, they're forcing the Saints to drive the field and put together enough plays. And eventually they get a holding call, somebody blows a blocking assignment, somebody goes the wrong way on a route, and it breaks down. And that's the problem right now. It's not just Pete Carmichael. It's beyond that. And I don't know how they get it fixed, but it's upon everybody to try and get it fixed.
I actually have a question for you. You think if they were able to simplify things in this offense?
Yeah, I think that's probably what they got to do.
And maybe go up there without or make the checks very, very simple to where they're not having these communication issues, because we saw it multiple times in the game where Derek Carr after a play is like holding his hands up and saying what's going on, or they're talking about it after they would simplifying what they do.
I think
help?
that's going to be the answer this week for sure, in a short week. But I also think it's got to come down to sometimes. I saw one time where Derek was making the motion and Olave wasn't looking. So there's all these just little things that are causing the myriad issues they've got. But the biggest issue, in my opinion, is the offensive line. I mean, they've got serious issues there, especially with all the injuries they've got. I don't know how they correct it. So then it comes back to coaching, right? You've got these issues going into this game. You're probably going to be playing short-staffed up front. Trevor Penning's struggling. How do you compensate for that? That's coaching. They've got to get around their issues, because every team in the league's got these type of issues. I mean, we don't know what the Jags are going to do. So really it comes down to the coaching staff putting them in better positions and the players understanding that. But it's just, there's just a lot wrong on that side of the ball right now. And look, the defense didn't play well in the first half. I mean, the defense, I don't know what was going on. They were getting run. I mean, one point, Texans ran 8 straight plays. When's the last time that's happened against the Saints defense? 8 straight runs.
Yeah.
You know, that they didn't bring it with the same intensity. And they can't afford to have a letdown with all the problems going with the offense. I know it's a lot of pressure on the defense, but they're the elite unit on this team. They've got to carry this team. And then when you have kicking woes, I mean, in a team that's built to win close games, you can't have that. So there's just a lot of things going wrong right now, and this team doesn't have that margin for error. They don't have a Drew Brees that can just compensate for all these shortcomings.
You know it's getting bad when we're talking about simplifying things when a week or two ago we're saying I need to use more motion and do some more stuff, and now all of a sudden we're like, hey, let's dumb it down for these guys.
And that's what they did,
Preach.
and they screwed it all up. I mean, the players wanted, incorporated a lot of the stuff the players wanted, and then the players were screwing it up. So that that's what I'm saying. So like it's like whack-a-mole right now.
Here's you bring up a good point, and we heard after Sunday's game, Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas and Demario Davis all sort of had the same message, and Dennis Allen to a certain extent did yesterday as well, where he's saying we've got certain guys who have to pay better attention to detail. Some of these guys, Alvin Kamara was questioning preparation. He was saying, I know that how I prepare for a game, I don't know how everybody else is preparing a game. Who is he calling out there? Do we have any idea? Do we want to speculate on that? I mean, like, clearly there's some fissures happening in this locker room.
I mean, I'd rather not speculate on who the players are because we don't know the assignments for every given player on a given play. But the fact that they're publicly saying this, right? I mean, this is a public challenge to whoever the problem is. So I mean, maybe we will see. Maybe that's like maybe they have reached this nadir, right? Where they're publicly calling people out, even if they're not using their names, and saying like, we got to get our stuff together. Because if you guys are all out there doing your own thing and freelancing and not being on the same page with everybody else, this is what the results are going to look like. So maybe that's what they need. I don't know, but I'll believe it when I see it.
And look, I don't think it's just one person either. Like, or two people. I was told the 4th and 4 play to Alvin out in the flat. A lot of people questioning why that ball was. Why don't you go past the sticks? Well, actually, it's designed. That play was designed to go to Mike Thomas. And it's a 2-man route, basically, two-man read. It goes to Mike Thomas on a stick route, past the chains. But the second option is Alvin. And it all comes down to how the linebacker plays Mike Thomas. And Alvin kind of jogged out there on his route. He didn't bolt out, and that didn't put enough pressure on that linebacker. He could muddy up the pass to Thomas and still get out and make the play on Alvin. So that's on Kamara. So, it's not just one or two guys. I mean, on that play, Alvin's got to have a sense of urgency to get out in the flat, and he beats that linebacker to the stick and makes the first down. And then there's plays where I've seen where Eric McCoy is getting beat, just flat out beat. Cesar Ruiz, flat out beat. Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, so these are their best players. And then Derek Carr doesn't put a good ball on somebody. So I just think it's all these players. And I don't think it's one guy. The communication issues, I think, are probably what we're talking about here a little bit. And some of that's on the younger players, I think, probably not paying attention to detail. But these details are why you stay in the facility or why you stay in your playbook till midnight. And when you're in a crisis like they're in right now, when somebody's not watching you, what are you doing? I think that's kind of what they're getting at, what some of these pros are.
I think it all just comes down to attention to detail. And I think when Sean was here, I know we keep going back to the Sean Payton era, but I mean, he was a stickler for details, and they didn't miss these little assignments like that. And I think that shows up on Sundays now, and that's what we're starting to see.
I think one reason this is so frustrating for Saints fans and their players, and we're supposed to be impartial observers, but it's just frustrating from a human being perspective to see a team. Jeff, you mentioned almost every player on the offense, and yet they're still within one more play of winning that game yesterday. They're still within maybe 2 more plays of being 5-1 this year. I mean, it is right there if they could fix these things, partially because the defense is so good, partially because the talent is there. But you did mention something. I want to get into it before we really start our preview of the Jags game, and that's the offensive line, which is in shambles right now. James Hurst walked out of NRG Stadium in a walking boot and crutches. He's not playing Thursday. I mean, he's listed as questionable, but let's be real. Andres Pete had a groin injury. He was active but didn't play. We don't know about him.
He did play. He actually was out in the game.
Did Pete go out? Okay.
Yeah, he was out in like special teams.
I guess I missed that.
I just saw it this morning. That's why I was surprised.
Interesting, yeah. Ryan Ramczyk left with a concussion. Very rare in modern days of concussion protocol to see anybody on a short week come back from concussion.
Even
protocol.
on a normal week.
Even on a normal week, it's hard. So it's almost impossible he plays. So the Saints have this situation where they benched Trevor Penning, and now they have to rely. He played 78% of snaps anyway because of Hurst's injury. So he'll have to play again Thursday night, obviously. They haven't signed anybody yet. We're speaking Tuesday, like lunchtime. So maybe we'll hear of word they'll sign somebody off the street. But as of right now, they moved Cesar Ruiz over to right tackle for Ramczyk. They're playing Max Garcia at left guard. I mean, like, Nick Saldiveri had to go in and play. Like, we don't know what this line is even going to look like.
That's true. And it's not only it's Ramczyk, it's James Hurst, it's Pete, it's also Landon Young, who's probably their top swing tackle, a guy whose the plan is for him to go in if either of the starters get hurt. He's been out for a couple of weeks with a hip injury. We have no idea if he's going to be able to play. I mean, they're in some dire straits on that offensive line, and they're going up against a Jacksonville team that really gets after the passer. Josh Allen, I think, is leading the NFL in pressures. He's got something like 7 sacks in 6 games. He's a dude, number 1 overall pick from a couple of years ago, I think. Maybe top 5 pick, something like that. That Trayvon Walker was their number 1 pick. Either way, this Jags pass rush is legit. You're talking about the Saints going into a game without their preferred starters at left and right tackle, shuffling who knows who else into these spots. I mean, it could be a long game for them, for the offense. And this is just why, I just feel like we're in for more of the same with this team. It's really hard to envision a scenario where they just go out and, flip a switch and reverse all the wrongs that they've had for the last 6 weeks, because they're playing with their starters have been bad, and now they're playing with the guys who are behind the starters.
They may have to play Andres Pete at tackle. I mean, he's played tackle before. I think he's close because he was out there in special teams. I mean, I think they said he got hurt on the last play of Thursday's practice, strained his groin, but he was close enough to where he was up. So look, he's gonna have to suck it up is what it's gonna come down to, I think. But how effective will he be? Like Luke said, their best pass rushers are on the outside, and Penning has just struggled, man. I mean, he struggled in that game. Now, some people have told me that he wasn't, because he was going to be down and he wasn't part of the game plan. He was basically working on the scout team last week, that may have affected him, but he was just getting overpowered at the point of attack by players much lighter than him. He's got fundamental technique issues that I think they finally gave up on, and we saw it in that game play out. I mean, lots of times he's getting bull rushed back into Carr, and it's affecting the passing game, even when they're not getting sacks. They're putting pressure on him, so he's got to suck it up. He's got to play better, and they may have to play, I think, Pete at tackle. That might be the answer to get through this game until some of these other guys come back. Got Cam Irving, too, on the practice squad, who's a veteran player that's played tackle in the league for multiple teams.
We talked in the preseason, Rod. I mean, I remember this conversation several times. Is Jameis Winston struggling because the second-team offensive line is so bad? Well, they've basically got half of the second-team offensive line out there right now. That's all they've got.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of always my, I guess, excuse for Jameis during those preseason games, because I did think the second-team offense was definitely it was a big drop-off from first team to second team, especially compared to the 2 defensive lines. I thought the Saints' second-team defense was a lot better than so when you see that in practice, you saw Jameis always in this helter-skelter mode. I thought it was because of that. So, and now you are in a real NFL game, depending on these guys to protect the quarterback who is already dealing with the shoulder injury still, but which I think he's getting close to 100% now in Derek Carr. But it's a big concern this week.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So you're watching the Saints Insider podcast for Tuesday, October the 17th, brought to you by Bank Plus. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe to our Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. And keep in mind that we will not be publishing these videos on the regular NOLA.com YouTube channel any longer. So if you know somebody who watches them over there, let them know we're on the Saints at NOLA.com YouTube channel going forward. That's where we'll be after Thursday night's game for the Saints Insider postgame show. So let's take a moment now and dig into Thursday's game. More than a moment, a few moments. We'll start as we always do when the Saints have the ball. We've been talking about the offensive line, the communication, all of these issues. Is there any reason to believe it gets better, Dunk, in a short week? I mean, it just seems like the most impossible time to fix this.
Well, I think Jacksonville's 31st in the league in pass defense, so they can be exposed on the back end if you have time. I think that's the key is how do they scheme up with this patchwork offensive line some semblance of a passing attack, because Jacksonville's very good against the run. I think they're third or fourth in the league. I haven't watched enough of their games to know if teams are just attacking them downfield and eschewing the run because they feel like that's the weakness. But if they're able to give Carr time, and he's proven this, when he's got time in a clean pocket, he can find receivers downfield. So they should be able to exploit that if they can figure out a way to attack downfield. To me, that's the key to the whole game. If the Saints can get in the they're going to have to score, I think, in the mid-20s. I think Lawrence is going to play. I'll be surprised if he doesn't. So I think it's kind of like last week. If they could have just gotten into the mid to upper 20s, they're probably going to win. But they're going to win most of the games they play with this defense. I don't think Jacksonville is going to light this defense up, especially with the limitations of Trevor Lawrence. But they've got to figure out a way to buy time and keep the pocket cleaner with what they've got at hand this week.
And I will say that despite Jacksonville's the yardage they've given up, they're kind of like one of those older Saints defenses where they give up a bunch of yardage, but they're also like really aggressive, and I think they're leading the NFL in interceptions. So, I look, they're going to have to play pretty close to mistake-free football, I think. Right? Derek's been, I guess, okay at protecting the football. He's throwing a couple weird interceptions. You're just like, what would you see there? That interception, obviously, against Houston on Sunday was just kind of a jump ball, 50-50 ball with the game on the line. But Jacksonville will make you pay for mistakes, especially if their pass rush is getting after you and forcing you to throw some of these wobbly passes. They'll capitalize on it. So they got to be really careful on Thursday night.
Yeah, you look at their stats. I mean, they forced 15 turnovers this season. They forced 4 against the Colts on Sunday. So I mean, that's kind of what they do. And if the Saints turn the ball over, they're going to be in trouble against this team. I mean, and we've seen the Saints. I mean, we know they have to play almost perfect to win anyway. So if they get into that situation where they're turning the ball over and missing the field goals and all that stuff, I mean, they won't win.
It could get ugly if they start turning the ball. I mean, that's one thing they've been okay at is hanging on.
I think they got to get some creativity too offensively. Like, I'm not saying just throw a bunch of gimmick plays, but they got to try something to get a big play, to get an explosive play, to get some easy points. Because right now, this driving the length of the field, putting together it's just not going to work, man. Eventually, something's going to break down, like we talked about. Can they get something easy? I know that's easier said than done in the NFL. And I would say this. I mean, scoring's down for the most part across the league. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, teams are scoring. We watched the Cowboys-Chargers. It was 2017. I mean, that's kind of the way the league's gone. Everybody's gone to this too-deep zone coverage defense where it forces you to do these things. So can the Saints pick their spots enough time and have enough time to dial up an explosive play? I don't know.
You're not going to be able to do those 10, 11, 12-play drives if you keep committing those bad offensive penalties.
Yeah, I know. That's an issue no one's really talked about. I mean, I tweeted it out this week. I mean, the Saints lead the league in penalties. 55 penalties, 12 of them have been declined because they've gotten a play that they'd rather have than but I mean, they lead the league in holding, offensive holding. Those are drive killers with this offense.
Oh, yeah.
And even false starts, they're up there again. They had a lot last year. So there's just so many things going wrong that this offense isn't capable of overcoming it right now because of the other issues we're talking about.
And it's everything that bad football teams do. I mean, this is what they do, and we're seeing it.
One bit of good news for the Saints, in addition to Trevor Lawrence being questionable, Tyson Campbell, their top cornerback in Jacksonville, hamstring pull, doesn't look like he'll be able to play. Got this stat from Adam Chernoff, was listening to his podcast this morning. He says Tyson Campbell's been off the field for Jacksonville for 50 snaps this year. In those 50 snaps, they allow a full point more if you look at EPA per play. They allow a full point more per play when he's off the field than when he's on. So you already mentioned a kind of a weak pass defense. There could be some opportunities there. And I do wonder if it's simplification like you're talking about, Jeff. Like, just simplify things. Let's run some normal route trees that no one can screw up, and let's just see if we can beat these guys one-on-one.
Yeah, and I think part of it is also the stuff we thought was going to actually unlock this offense, Derek Carr at the line of scrimmage, making the checks and everything, that seems to be what's a lot of it's being screwed up is the communication between what he's seeing and the read and then communicating it. I mean, it shouldn't be this hard. That's the one thing I question in all this is why does it seem like they're trying to solve quantum physics here, right? Here Houston is the opponent they just played with a rookie quarterback, a first-year offensive coordinator, a new head coach. You're talking about a total startup operation in a lot of ways. They didn't look nearly as disjointed to me offensively as the Saints did with more veteran players and veteran talent. So some of this, I think, is just excuse-making for this offense.
Just score 20 points a game. If you do that, you're winning most of these games with the defense you've got. Just score 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals a game, 20 points.
Right. It's not that hard. Now, in this league, it's getting harder to score in the mid-20s unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs or 49ers or something like that.
And to your point, I think I looked at the betting lines for this week, and 14 NFL games this week. There's only one total above 45 points. So talking about combined total for both teams. So it is getting harder. And with that said, we'll shift over to Jaguars offense versus Saints defense. And again, the major question here is, will Trevor Lawrence play for Jacksonville? And if he does, Luke, is he 100%? I mean, is that something where he's a guy who can move around in the pocket and make time for himself? And if that's not the case, kind of like we saw with Joe Burrow early in the year, then he's a sitting duck in the pocket too.
Yeah, and that's obviously huge for the Saints defense. The guys who are moving around in the pocket just give him all sorts of fits. So even if he does play, you have to imagine that his mobility is going to be hindered. He's going to be forced to play more from within the pocket and not be able to move around in there as well when they're getting after him. I would expect Dennis Allen to take advantage of that. And I know Jacksonville's got some good receivers, and those guys have played really well there under Doug Peterson, and guys like Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley. I think Zay Jones is still doing some nice things there. But I still feel pretty good about the Saints secondary, even though they gave up too many explosives last week. I think I still feel good about them on a week-to-week basis, pretty much no matter who they're going up against. So, this could be a good matchup for the Saints, a better matchup certainly than what I thought coming into the season, because I think Trevor Lawrence is probably the best quarterback they'll face this season if they face him. The guy I think you got to be concerned about, he's been playing really, really well these last couple of weeks, is Travis Etienne, Louisiana kid.
Jennings, Louisiana, and Clemson, just like Lawrence. So, Rod, this defense, as opposed to the offense, has shown that it can make adjustments. They did have a pretty poor first half, allowed 59 yards and 3 points in the second half on Sunday. They are pretty healthy. And so as many question marks as there are about the offense, you have to feel pretty confident in this defense, even if Lawrence does play.
Yeah, I know. I talked to Colin Saunders after the game, and that's one of the things he talked about. They were really disappointed in how they played in the first half against the Texans. And, he talked about how they just went in and, they made the adjustment. I think Cam Jordan talked about it as well. They were able to shut the run down in the second half a little bit. And so I think the defense is going to be fine. They'll want to come out and play 4 quarters. I think that first half against the Texans really, kind of motivated them to make them realize that, hey, we got to do this for the whole 4 quarters, especially when you see how bad the offense is playing. You know that, hey, we got to carry this.
It is such a shame that this defense has just been forced to play on these razor thin margins for 2 years. They're so good. They deserve all this credit. They deserve it from a national standpoint. Everybody should be praising this defense. But the fact that they went out there and they gave up 17 points in the first half, and all they could talk about after the game was man, we blew it. Come on, man. Yeah. That defense is awesome. Yeah. That defense gave up 20 points and to a good offense. They held C.J. Stroud to his worst day as a professional. He didn't even complete 50% of his passes.
And he threw an interception.
He hadn't done that yet. And I hate it. I hate it for those guys so much because they play so good on a week in, week out basis, and they're just we gave up 20 this week. It was too much. It's come on.
To their credit, they haven't pointed fingers yet. Those guys are
I've been trying to get them to point fingers.
Yet.
I tried to get someone that's, and they were like, it's a team game and we got to play complimentary football. And they're saying all the right things, which is good because this is something that could end up dividing that locker room if it gets too bad. I think.
I was impressed with C.J. Stroud. I mean, I think when he had to make some big-time throws, he did. They're good. He's the real deal. They're going to be good. I mean, they don't even have that many weapons, and they manufactured 20 points against that Saints defense largely because of him, because he was making some big-time throws. And the running game, which hadn't been there all year for the Texans, and all of a sudden they were just running it down the Saints' throat, and that was what was really disconcerting, and they got that fixed. But it was too late. You're playing catch-up with an offense that's got all these issues we talked about. I think Luke's right, though. I think the Saints defense they understand, like, they've got to be on their A game, and they'll come out to play. But I think Lawrence is going to play. I mean, I'll be shocked if he doesn't play. I mean, I think they said it was a minor injury. The swelling is obviously something he's going to have to deal with. It's a sprained knee. I mean, I saw Breeze play with those plenty of times. He knows how important he is to their offense, and they're playing well. I mean, they've beaten Buffalo. I think they rocked Indy a couple of times. They obviously match up well with Indy. They won 3 games in a row, and so it's going to be incumbent upon the Saints defense to do their part. This dome, they got to play better in the dome. I mean, the Saints, even when they won against Tennessee, they didn't play that well. They just haven't played well at home for whatever reason the last year and a half or so.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on. It's only been a couple games, but we'll see if they can play better at home. You mentioned margin for error and complementary football and pointing fingers. And so let's just touch on special teams here. Blake Grupe, has been very good at times. He was NFC Special Teams Player of the Week against New England, but he has missed arguably – well, he hit a couple of important field goals against Tennessee, so I don't want to say the 2 biggest field goals. He clearly missed the biggest field goal he's taken all year. That was the go-ahead one against Green Bay. And then he missed a pretty big one Sunday. And, the 52-yarder in the first half, okay, we'll let that one go. But a 29-yard field goal miss in the second half, and Luke, you've mentioned this a couple times, would have cut the lead to 4, would have given them an opportunity to where they didn't necessarily have to go for it on 4th down. And if they just kick field goals every time they get down there, and they're well within Grupe's range, they win that game 22-20. Doesn't work that way, and part of that is because you need to hit that first one.
Yes, but I think this is kind of what you have to anticipate when you're a team going into the season with a rookie place kicker, an unproven place kicker. Will Lutz struggled in his first year here at times, right? He had misses, and the problem is that we are talking about these razor thin margins, and they can't overcome something like that. Where Saints teams in the past, you miss a field goal, it's like, okay, whatever, we've got this great offense, we'll make up for it with the touchdowns. But it's the errors, the miscues get magnified when everything else you're doing is not working. So, I personally think Grupe's fine. I think he's had a solid rookie year. I know a lot of people were upset with him because of the 2 misses. But he was 11 for 12 before that. I don't think he's missed an extra point yet this year, which, I don't want to jinx the guy, but I think he's fine. You're going to have to live with the rookie kicker missing some makeable kicks sometimes. But he's not the problem on this team right now. Their offense, once again, just completely wet the bed in the red zone. I blame it on them and not Blake Grupe missing a 29-yarder.
Yeah, they have to be built kind of like the Ravens, right? That's kind of what this team is. And we saw the Ravens win the game in London with 6 field goals by Justin Tucker. They won the game. That's kind of what the Saints are. They're going to score in the 20s, and their defense is going to carry them. And they've got to
when they're going to score in the 20s? When they're going to score in the 20s?
Well, you know what I mean. They're scoring in the 19s, whatever. The point is, they're going to score. They're going to score low margin. They don't have margin for error in missing field goals, so they have to rely on their kicking game. It has to be good if you're going to play this way. If you're going to play a defensive brand of football the way the Ravens play, they've got maybe the greatest kicker in NFL history. He's not going to be that, but. When you rolled the dice on a rookie kicker, you had to realize this is potentially part of the problem. So I don't know how he missed that one. I've watched it about 10 times. It looks like he just yanked it. It looked like the hold was fine. I didn't see anything that would lead me to believe that there was anything wrong with the operation. But can't miss a 29-yarder. And you're right. It dictated the rest of the game how Dennis Allen called it. And again, they were playing catch up.
For the record, I'm not saying that it's okay for Blake Grupe to miss 29-yarders. That's got to be automatic.
Yeah, I mean that's shorter than an extra point.
It is.
And
I
it
just
just
think this is part of what you got to live with as a rookie when you're rolling with a rookie.
It sapped their. You could just see their body language go down when he missed that, the offensive body language, and that's been an issue too. I mean, each one of these setbacks they have on offense, a sack or a hold, it's just like, oh, here we go again. And it's like Rod said. I mean, that's what bad teams do.
All right, quick big picture look before we get into our predictions for this week. After this, the Saints have the good news of playing on a Thursday, of course, is that you get the mini bye after that. You get 10 days, and then they'll go to Indianapolis, who's going to be without Anthony Richardson. Then they come back home to face Chicago, who's going to be without Justin Fields most likely. Yep. And then they go to Minnesota, who will be without Justin Jefferson most likely. So again, like we talk about it, they're getting every break you can get, and the opportunity is there to get on a roll. They just got to look in the mirror and fix those things, which obviously is number one.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the breaks every week. They're not playing this guy. But this team, it's really about themselves to me. Like, I think we're putting a lot into, he's not playing, they should win. But the Saints need to fix the Saints. And if they do that, which we don't know if they can or not, but if they ever do that, I mean, this thing could possibly reach their potential. But until they do, I think we're probably putting too much into this guy's not playing, which is going to contradict my predictions later, but go ahead.
Foreshadowing. Yeah. Okay, time for Prediction Saints Insider Podcast. And I do agree with you, by the way, Rod. I mean, it feels like if the Saints fix the Saints, there's an opportunity to reel off like 4 in a row, 6 out of 7. I mean, just looking at the schedule, like it's there for you.
Don't do it to yourself, man.
And the thing is,
that's where the frustration comes from, though, isn't it? From fans. It's like you see the schedule and you say, this is what it could be.
But the thing is, they're still not going to be very good, even if they do that, in my opinion. I mean, like we've seen, when you watched around the league, you see what the elite teams look like. That's not what even if they fix some of these issues and beat the Anthony Richardson-less Colts, what has that proven? It's kind of like the Patriots game. I mean, what did that prove? The Patriots are terrible. So, like, that's not the standard that fans expect or this team should expect is I guess that's what we're dealing with here, getting 9-8 and winning the NFC South. But that's not good enough. And I think that's fans here, media here, everybody, we've all seen what good a 13-3 team looks like. That's not what we're seeing, even if they skeech by the Bears in a couple weeks.
The only way I'd feel good about it is if they just beat the brakes off of a couple teams,
Yeah.
Where I'm like, they figured it out.
That Patriots game about 3 or 4 times over, and then maybe you'll see.
You're not talking about shutouts, but like get a couple double-digit wins. Like then I'll be like, okay, they figured something out. But like if they,
we were talking about this in the car ride back from Houston. Like maybe the worst thing that could happen for the Saints is they go 9-8 and win this division, squeaking by a bunch of teams, and then somehow catch fire and win a playoff game. And everybody thinks going into the offseason, number one, your draft pick goes down, and number two, like everybody thinks, this is fixed and everything's great, and then you're playing a first place schedule next year, and you're playing the AFC West instead of the AFC South, and like it could really set this franchise back.
Yeah, let's just see what happens, man. I'm not gonna go out on a limb and say like, man, that schedule looks so easy, because like people that weak schedule is probably looking at the Saints and be like, man, that's a winnable game right there.
That's true. That is true.
They got to get it figured out.
So on that note, let's get to predictions. I got to change the order of the way we do the graphic so that it matches the stage still. But Luke, you're first. What you got for Thursday night?
I've got Jaguars 17, Saints 13, and I'm making this prediction before we know officially what's going on with Trevor Lawrence, and we may not know that till Thursday. But I just, like I've been saying this whole show, I'm having a really hard time having any confidence in this team until they show me something. And if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, like, sure, I have a really hard time seeing the C.J. Beathard-led Jaguars offense put up anything against that defense. But like this Saints offense is just, it has not given me any reason whatsoever through 6 weeks to have any sort of confidence in them against a good football team. So until that starts to happen, I'm going to have a hard time picking the Saints to win.
I should have prefaced with that. These are unofficial predictions, just because of the short week, because it's Tuesday. We haven't even seen these teams practice this week. We have no idea. Our official predictions will be on NOLA.com Thursday morning and in the Times-Picayune. So we'll let these slide, but this is what we got for now. I'll go next. I got the Saints winning this game fairly easily, actually, 20-10. And this is more of a vote for the Saints defense than it is anything else. And it's also, like, we talk about intangibles with the Green Bay game and how all these intangibles were against the Saints. They're all for the Saints this week. You mentioned it, Jeff. The Jaguars have won 3 in a row. They were in London for 2 weeks. Then they come back home and play a divisional game, which is obviously of utmost importance. They beat the Colts. Now they have these injuries. Like, I actually don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to play. And the reason I don't think he's going to play is because they've banked some wins. They're playing a non-conference opponent on a short week. I think they'd rather rest him and have him back in 10 days and go after some of these more important games with their banked wins than really go hard after this game. I think the Saints are catching them at exactly the right time. And on the other side, the Saints have to be desperate to win this game. So I just think it's one of those NFL schedule spots that works in the Saints' favor. Their defense dominates. They get just enough on offense. Doesn't solve all the problems, but they come up with a win. Rod, I think you're next.
Are we going to talk about last week's picks at all, or?
Rod wants a victory lap.
You may go right ahead and talk about last week's picks.
Put my crown on for being the only one.
The only one who took the Texans.
We need a crown. We need a crown.
I'd be wearing it.
Maybe a big heavyweight championship belt or something. One of those things
I like
they wear, turnover belt or whatever.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, last week, I did pick the Texans to win, and just wanted to make sure we had that on record here. But Luke's winning for the season, I think, right? Are y'all tied? Or?
No, I'm not tied anymore. I've lost 2 in a row because
Okay,
I picked the Patriots.
Okay, you're still winning, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can wear the
Smile
belt.
says it all.
But yeah, this week I just, I think my pick is strictly based on Trevor Lawrence. If Trevor Lawrence plays, I think the Jags win. If he doesn't play, I think the Saints win. And I think was 20-17. It's the same scores that we always have, 20 to something.
Whoever first team to 20 wins.
Yeah, that's kind of how the Saints are. Yeah, so yeah, I picked the. Yeah,
Who'd you pick?
Yeah, we were all
2017
waiting on
who?
it.
I picked.
You're gonna flip
As
it.
of
Whoever,
now, I picked the Saints because I don't think Trevor Lawrence is playing. But if he is playing, just switch the numbers around on the prediction.
All right. So that's Rod's prediction. Dunk, what you got?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the more desperate team wins, and because of those intangible factors you talked about, I think the Saints. Look, this is a do or die for me. They either get this game straight. If they lose this one, I'm not saying it's a must win, but it's kind of a must win. And they have to be desperate this week with how they played last week.
It was, by the way, Rod, it was 17-16. I think that's what
That was
I was trying to tell. 17-16. Saints is what you had, and Dunk, you have 24-23.
I'm counting on some chaos.
Yeah, there better be a couple of
Counting on
defensive
some
touchdowns
chaos.
to get
Yeah,
to
some
24-23.
defensive, special teams, snafus for both sides to get that up in the 20s. Bet the over.
Wow, bet the over.
That's terrible
killing
advice.
me, man.
That's terrible advice.
Take the over.
That's bad advice.
hit over
Because I'm also the one that
They've
said
not
this.
hidden,
Saints would
not
kill
only have
the
they not
Texans.
hidden over yet this year, but I think it's like going back a full season out of 17 games, they've hit the over one time. It's like you'd make so much money betting Saints unders every week.
Also, I can't believe you picked them to win by double digits.
20-10. 20. Well, Jeff
I
did
did
it
that last week.
Look how that worked
I
out.
underestimated the Texans. Texans were a lot better than I thought. A lot better.
It's a schedule spot. Look, everything's in the Saints' favor. I think they get. I'm not going to say they get right because I don't think the offense will be spectacular, but it's going to take even less than it normally takes for them to get this done.
So everything's in the Saints' favor for a team that's missing both tackles and hadn't done anything all season.
Yeah,
I just
intangible.
this is such a crazy game that we cover because like the Saints are coming off a game where like the house is on fire and they're missing 2 tackles and 3 of us are up here going like, yeah, I think the Saints will win.
Well, that's the thing. For 40 minutes, we've talked
and-
about how bad they are and how what a terrible situation this is, and then 3 of us pick them to win.
And look,
Just give me my crown now.
I think Robert Saleh said that this week. They beat the Philadelphia Eagles without their 2 starting corners, their 2 best offensive linemen, and their Hall of Fame quarterback. Who would have picked that? That's the NFL.
Well, and that was my other point was I picked the Saints because the Saints make no sense. And I'm tired of trying to make sense of them, and this makes no sense. But yeah, I think they'll play well and they'll win.
I like it. Stick to it.
We should have like a pitcher of Kool-Aid up here and we just like drink
Just
it.
drink the Kool-Aid. I'm not even drinking the Kool-Aid. Like I don't like this team long term, but I think this spot is good for the Saints. They're desperate, like you said, Dunk, and Jacksonville they're like the opposite of desperate. They're hurt. They're banged up. They're coming off a 3-game winning streak. They can afford to take a step back. Although I will say I felt like that last year, the Ravens Monday night game was like that. They had a bunch of injuries and were resting a bunch of guys. and they still beat the Saints. So
Packers, all the guys they've rested,
yeah,
still won.
It's just handing you the plate of cheese to eat the cheese too, along with your Kool-Aid.
I'll accept that. We'll talk after the game Thursday night on the Saints Insider postgame show, and then we'll be back with regular podcasts for you next week. So Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Our thanks to them. Our thanks to the guys behind the glass, Robert Young and Norman Bell. And for Jeff Duncan, Luke Johnson, and Rod Walker, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching.